Mr. Chair.
Tuatahi e karakia. Tēnei te araki runga ki te aro tēnei tupua, ki te aro tēnei ariki, ki te aro tēnei matuai. Ko te aro ranginui e tūnei ko papatua nuku I takoto nei. Kera rau I hora ana tapawai o tāne tēnei te pō, nau mai te ao, te turu whakamāua ki a tēnā, tēnā. Ui e, tai. Ai ngā iwi I ngā reo I ngā mana, tēnā koutou katoa, I ngā mate kua wehe ki te pō, haere, haere atu rā. Oku rangatira, nau mai hara mai, ki te tautoko te kaupapa o tēnei rā, te kaupapa o te kaunihera o ngā motu. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. So just a little mihi to open our hui, our karakia to start. Talks about aspirations and following the pathways of the people who have gone before, who have created this great city that we live in district that we live in here in Aotearoa. So, nau mai hara mai. So just to let you know that tab 3 has been withdrawn today. There's some more work to be done on that paper, so tab 3 won't be discussed today. We have, by way of deputation, a request by Uncle Peter Moiahu to address our group today. So I think that's the first of the deputation that he's going to make. Will be first off the rack. There's no need for me to go through health and safety. I'm sure that you're all safe and you've got your own house plans should anything happen in your own household. So we'll leave it there. Julie, am I right in allowing Matua Peter to address the group today?
It's fine, you can do that now and we'll do apologies later.
Oh, I knew I missed out something. Okay. Matua Peter, if you'd like to do your presentation or take it.
Kia ora. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to address the committee on tab 1, which is the sale of a slither of land at 41 Gilbert Street, New Plymouth. And the reason why I want to address that is there's an underlying principle which Ngāti Te Whiti have made clear in their opposition to the sale. They oppose the sale, and it's contained, their opposition is contained in the report at tab 1. However, if the sale was to proceed, then they seek a share of those proceeds. I want to make it clear, Mr. Chairman, I do not speak on behalf of Ngāti Te Whiti. I'm speaking in support of their opposition to this sale. Before colonisation, all the land here was owned by Māori, or was in Māori kaitiaki tanga, for want of a better frame. Once colonisation occurred, the land changed. And we have in the report that the council says that in 1873, the land came into private ownership. However, the council doesn't provide any sale or purchase agreement to substantiate that. It's simply a claim and someone has had the title. So that it leaves us to speculate that this was stolen Māori land. And I repeat that, stolen Māori land. As we all know, over 1 million acres of Māori land was stolen here in Taranaki. And of course, many laws and regulations were then enacted to prevent Māori from recovering their land. those same laws and regulations apply today. And I note in the report, there's some reference as to why council can't disperse income from land to other bodies. I don't know the exact terms, but I did note that in the report. So in a sense, Māori were denied justice when our land was stolen. We were falsely accused of rebellion. We were imprisoned without trial. We were used as slave labor, and none of that is contained in this report. None of it. So in my opinion, the attitudes that prevailed, the colonial type attitudes that prevailed back in 1873, I'm hopeful don't prevail today. Actually, I'm reasonably confident that they don't prevail today. So what has this background got to do with Gilbert Road? Well, actually, it has a lot to do with it, because in tab 4 of your report, you talk about establishing a partnership between council and iwi. And the reason why I refer to the Gilbert Street is because there's a certain attitude that surrounds that sale. Ngāti Te Whiti opposed the sale. The council's report recommends the sale. And my question is, where is the partnership attitude with that? I know consultation took place. I read that in the report. But at some point, there is no underlying principles or values that substantiate the sale of that land other than the council's right to do it, other than that. So my question, I guess, is if council is going to head down the path of establishing a partnership with iwi, which I encourage, I think it's timely, but I guess it needs to be based on good faith and goodwill, and it needs to have underlying values and principles so that we can allay any doubts or any disputes that might arise in the future. My plea to this committee is to please defer the sale of this land until such time that council has an opportunity to confirm the values and principles of its partnership relationship with iwi. I think once that is done, once that is established, then both parties can confidently move forward together. But I ask that the sale of this property be deferred until such time as a partnership agreement is reached between council and iwi. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to address the committee. I'm happy to take questions if there are any.
Thank you, Matua. Is there any questions from anybody on the committee?
Mayor Holdham.
Yeah, kia ora, Peter. You've asked that this sale be paused. Is that just this sale or any other council sale?
I'm not mindful. I'm not aware of any other council sale, Your Worship. I just became privy to this one when I read the report.
Okay. And the other thing is, so what you're saying is that we shouldn't proceed with this until such time as we've explored the values of partnership.
Well, confirm them with iwi, because my understanding from tab 4 is that is what council is looking to do.
Right. But only this piece of land, not any others, because the council is in the business of buying and selling pieces of land on a fairly regular basis.
No, I'm not saying that, Your Worship. What I am saying is that this is the only piece of land that I understand has been opposed by a hapu entity. And all I'm asking is that this be deferred. I'm not asking for anything else at this point in time.
And look, my last question, in terms of partnership, I mean, the question is, because we've had this discussion before, do you believe that a partnership relationship should allow for situations where different parties disagree on a matter?
I think that that's part of a relationship. However, I think the partnership's values and principles should be the underlying factor to move forward. And if we don't have those, then I guess it's not much of a partnership.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anybody else would like to make any comments or a question of our of Matua?
There appear to be none, Mr. Chairman, I'm assuming. And if that's the case, thank you very much for the opportunity to address the committee.
There was someone who made a comment that was...
Oh, that was me just saying there were no further comments,
Oh, I
Mr.
see.
Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much once again, Matua. Oh, ka pai. We like to carry on now to tab 2, page 30. Road stopping and disposal adjoining owner uninformed legal road. Yeah.
Sorry,
So,
Mr. Chair, that should be tab 1. Oh, sorry, you've got your previous minutes first.
oh, sorry.
And
Sorry.
apologies.
And apologies.
Yes.
I don't like doing this. For me. But anyway, let's do the apologies first. Okay?
So there have been no apologies recorded or received, but I note that Ms. O'Carroll is not present.
Okay. So where do we go now? The
The previous minutes.
previous minutes.
Happy to move.
A seconder?
Got multiple hands up.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bublitz, I think. All right. All those in favour, do we signal with their hands? We better, Julie?
Yes.
Yeah. How'd that go? Everybody got it? Any against? No, fine. I can't see your hands. I can't see anybody's faces. So I'm relying on.
Perhaps, Mr. Chair, the members could unmute themselves for the vote, and then you can do it on voice.
Yes. Go around the table, maybe. Okay, so we tab 2 now?
Tab 1.
Tab 1. Oh, of course. So, I'm jumping ahead. So tab 1, page 10. Proposed road stopping and sale to adjoining owner on uninformed legal road, 41 Gilbert Street. So, yeah. Do we have the officers' report?
Yeah. So you have Ms. Jury online to introduce her report.
Thank you very much.
Kia ora. The matter before you is a recommendation for a road stopping and disposal to the adjoining owner at 41 Gilbert Street. This will be completed under the Local Government Act. The piece of road reserve in question is not used as road and has not been used as public road for some time, if at all. The use of this road in the future is not required or realistically foreseeable. It has essentially been privatised by encroachments by the adjoining owner. Any questions?
Is there any questions of the officer?
So you have Councillor Brown and Councillor Moyahu.
And Ms. King.
And
We'll go Councillor Brown first.
Thank you. Is there any restriction on what we are allowed to do legally with the sale proceeds?
So the proceeds go back into into the debt reduction or future asset purchases. So that's where they go.
Second supplementary, that is more policy, but is there any legal impediment to say pay the hapu, give the hapu some of the money?
Under the Local Government Act, there is no provision for us to give sales proceeds away to a third party, and we also can't hold the proceeds in trust.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Councillor Moore.
Kia ora, I'll go Matua.
Kenny.
Kia ora, thank you for the in-depth report and very comprehensive, in particular the consultations and the history that you provided of the adjoining land. My question is, and I've got a few, but this question in particular, how you said the road frontage land originally held as one residential section in the private ownership, and yet this was issued in 1873. And that seems to be the only time where we've actually got information with regards to the ownership of the land, but nothing predating that. Why is that?
We actually don't have access to that information. So we can only provide the information back to where we have access. Unfortunately, we don't have any access prior to that. And in doing so, we would have to go, be thousands and thousands of dollars for us to find out that information. And we just don't have access to that information. So we can only provide what we've got access to.
That information that you've only got up to, anything further, where would they research to find the information?
You would have to go back to deeds registers, and I'm actually not 100% sure how you would go about that, but I do know it's an expensive exercise, and it would be thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah, so it could be instead of an expense, an investment. So my question is there any information predating what you've said in the report that you could find in the limbs?
No, I can only find, that's as far back as I can go.
Okay, thank you.
There's another. Next
Councillor
question.
Bublitz. Yeah.
Bublitz. Thank you, Julie. If you can see them, I want to
Thank you.
name them.
Could I just seek some clarification around why Ngāti Te Whiti Hapu opposes it, the sale? Exactly why? What the exact reason is why they oppose the sale?
I believe it's because of confiscated land. That there's no access issues. There's no significant sites. There's no water bodies there. So that's what the belief is from the information that I've put into the report.
Okay, thank you.
And Ms. King.
So just a couple of questions. The first one is similar to Denny's question around the historical research of a particular land block. And I mean, I appreciate that it takes some time to get back to the original deed. Obviously, I've done the exercise myself, where you can actually go right back and track back through the titles to get to the original, often Crown grant or Crown deed that took the land. But is there any process in council's process around asking mana whenua what the history of the whenua was?
Why we have started doing the history of the land is because they have asked us to provide the history of the land, and that's what we've provided to them as far back as we can go. And I have just been asked to put that information into the report as far back as I can go. That's what I've been asked to complete.
So sorry, just supplementary to that. So I can appreciate that they may ask you for the legal history, but they will have their own history of that whenua. Is that part of council's process to query that with the hapu or iwi that you're engaging with?
No, when I engage, I just provide them with what we're going to be doing, with the information that I have at hand, and ask for feedback.
So for clarity, sorry, supplementary, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So I understand from that answer that there is no process of understanding the pre-European history to the land blocks, that, or certainly for this one in particular.
No, I have not asked that question.
Right.
Councillor Bublitz has a supplementary.
Fine.
Just following on from that, is there a chance for hapu to supply that information when you do ask for feedback?
Yes, they can provide me with any feedback they like. When we consult, we're wanting to ask if there's any reason that if we're missing anything, because we provide the information, as much of information as we can provide, but we could possibly be missing something. So that's what feedback we're asking for.
And so just supplementary that, so hapu and or iwi could provide historical information if they chose or decided to in that feedback?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Moya, who has a supplementary.
Yep, fine.
Kia ora, thank you. Just with regards to, I'm on page 25, during the consultation process, and it talks about under section 80 of the Public Works Act 1876, all roads were vested in the Crown. So was that, do you know, or are you aware, was that land that was vested into the Crown, was that confiscated through the Public Works Act?
I'm sorry, I don't know that answer.
Cool, thank you.
Ms. King has a supplementary.
Just on the point that was originally raised around, someone raised a question around the use of that money from the land sales. I know that that's limited because of the rules, but is there any consideration in council's process around purchasing another bit of land to, I guess, offset what's lost? Certainly in the hapu context, they see it as loss and continued loss. So is there any consideration from council in their process that allows them to pick up another block of whenua that may be culturally significant to hapu for the benefit of the community, not just hapu?
Sorry, that's not something that I can answer.
That's not in any way part of your considerations. Because I see you considered the answer back was that you were limited in what you could do with the money from the sale, but there was kind of no detail around it.
So the proceeds of sale do go back into reducing debt and also for future purchases of road reserve or assets, and we are constantly purchasing pieces of land for road widening and other reserves, etc.
Sorry, Laura Keenan, property manager. Just to.
Oh,
Laura, you're on mute, Laura.
Can you hear me there?
Mm-hmm. Now we can.
Sorry, Jackie, kia ora, Jackie, just to go back to that particular question, there's no specific process in the road stopping process to consider what you just asked, no.
Councillor Bublitz, have you got, no, Councillor Moya, who's got his hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. When I look at what's in the report, especially when it comes to the history of the adjoining land, there's nothing to say, obviously with the sign of Te Tiriti or Waitangi, there's nothing to say in there in particular how 1.3 million acres of land was confiscated in Taranaki. And when we look at when you've got here originally held, well, we all know it was originally held in Māoridom. But in the report, with no pre-context, I would have thought that something like when Te Tiriti of Waitangi was signed in 1840, 33 years after the signing, it came into private ownership as some sort of context with regards to our history. Can I just ask why such history that can be found relatively easy isn't in terms of the pre-context leading up to this history?
I'm
Can
sorry,
anyone answer me that? Sorry, what was that, Dee?
I don't have an answer for that. I'm sorry. It's not included in my report.
Okay, thank you.
There are no hands up, so the questions have finished.
Mātua Howie, can I make a comment here, please? Yep, you're on mute, Chair.
I'm sorry, I had a whole lot of motorbikes go past my house just then, so I thought
No worries.
you don't want to hear that.
Look, members, I guess just a couple of comments that may or may not be useful at this point as we come kind of closer to consideration of this first tab. The history of the land that we're now providing was asked for, I think, by Te Huinga Taumatua originally, not that long ago. So we started attempting to do that. What you're seeing in front of you, members, is our kind of first attempt. And as Ms. Jury pointed out, we are accessing the information that can be done easily and cost effectively. Yep, we could do a far more in-depth process that would cost some many thousands of dollars and take some months. But what we're talking about here is a 13 square metre piece of land worth $5,000. So the cost benefit simply wouldn't be there. I take the point about the wider picture, and we have open discussions with Te Atiawa actually about this exact point. We've got 30 or 40 of these on our books at the moment. This one, as you can see, has been around for 18 months. It's a tiny slither of land. We're trying to move this one through. I have undertaken with Dion to sit down and have a much wider discussion about the principles that Mr. Moahu was actually talking about earlier in terms of how we approach these land transfers and sales. So that's where it's heading. Once we can get back face to face and have a kāmihi discussion, we will be able to develop those principles. In the meantime, we've got people who've been waiting a long time for an answer. So we're trying to move these through in a reasonably timely fashion. This one is as I say, is a very small slither of land. So yep, look, the points are well made. They're not going unanswered or unnoticed. We have got a plan to address the wider issues and the principles. But that doesn't help us with these individual little lots we've got at the moment. So at this stage, the other thing I would add, and I think we've talked about this before, members, is for many decades, council have had a very clear message from central government, and particularly this came from OTS ever since the Waitangi Tribunal back in the 70s. You are not part of this discussion. Stay out of it. Sit on your hands and do as you're told. So that is exactly what councils for decades have been doing. I understand that the sentiment around that has changed, and we probably need to revisit that, but we can't revisit it piece of property by piece of property. We actually have to do that on a more fundamental basis. So at the moment, we're still doing what the government has instructed us to do. They come to us every now and then and say, we're doing a treaty settlement. How would you like to vest or hand over this piece of land? And many, many councils have done that. So what we're talking about here is a different kind of discussion, I suppose, a very 21st century discussion. It's a more mature discussion. It's one we need to have, but it's not one we can do tab by tab, I don't think, folks. Got it.
land is land. Doesn't matter how much it is. It might be something you can hold in your hand, you know. Land is land, and the history of land being taken, confiscated, and put in the hands of other people is a very, very important thing, as we all know, for Māori. And I mean, this is just part of the wedge that Māori are trying to do to remind people of the confiscations and the effects of that confiscation have done to their people. So I guess on the, well, myself is, you know, how big is or how small is a piece of land that you don't want to give away, you know, it's not yours. So, or well, it was somebody else's before it was confiscated and taken away illegally. So the upshot is that for a group of people from Te Huinga Taumatua, as representatives of our iwi, you can say that, you know, you've had people waiting for a long time for this piece of land to become free so they could buy it, or, you know, but we, you know, the iwi have been, or the hapu have been waiting for a long time too, to see whether they can get something back. So I guess that's part of the debate. And I guess how we form the motion, or to actually allow this to happen, or do we put a stake in that ground? I'll be interested to see the votes. So is there anybody else want to make a comment, etc.? Or
Ms. King.
Kia ora, Mr. Chair. Firstly, I absolutely want to give our appreciation to the council team who've done the work. Seeing it laid up like it is, I think is really been really useful. And when we get improvements like this, because I think we have to recognise that this is a fundamental improvement to a process that we haven't seen before, it makes us hungry for more, and hence the challenges and the questions that have been tabled here today. But please don't see them as criticisms, see them as an opportunity to further improve the process. That would be all I would want to say, other than the fact that I think Howie touched on the point that irrespective of how small that piece of whenua is, we see it disappearing again. So it's always a hard process, and I recognise the value, the financial value of it may not be much, but the symbolic value is immense.
Thank you very much, Jackie.
Sorry, Councillor Brown has his hand up.
Oh, okay.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Julie. I think it's important to realise the context of where we're at. We asked, as part of Te Huinga, for the officers to bring to us a history as best they could of how the land came into our possession as council. They've done that, and to the best of their ability. The question was asked then by our CEO at the time, well, we could go back further, as some people are asking, but it will cost a lot of money, it will take an enormous amount of time, and the process will grind to a halt. And it's an already slow process for these people waiting 18 months to secure a sliver of land outside. I understand the land is vital to iwi and hapu, I know that. But I think we have to consider also to take that context one step further of what is the art of the possible. Politically, we are able to do some things, we're not able to do others. But from that, you already heard our CEO, Craig, speak of, well, actually, we've been speaking to Te Atiawa about that. And it does act as a catalyst for a broader discussion. I think his words are wise. We can't do it item by item, but we can certainly use them as a catalyst to say, well, what can we do? And looking forward to the future in terms of using that to make decisions on a much broader context as best we can. So I don't see as a committee really we have any choice but to add our voice to the recommendation to go forward to council. I think it is the pragmatic and wise thing to do, but also acknowledge and use this as an example of what can be achieved by sitting around that table and working out what we can do politically. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Councillor Moya, who has his hand up?
Yes.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair. I want to begin by saying that there's always a choice. Often, sometimes, the choices are difficult to make. But I do want to begin by saying how proud I am of our council staff to go into the depth of not just the consultation process, but also the history. And when we look, I've always believed that we've got systemic issues, not so much on our staff. It's what I feel like is part of the processes where we can improve on. But what I see when I read the report was a massive improvement on what we're used to receiving. And I want to commend you, Dee, and your amazing team for providing us with what knowledge you did have, what research you were able to provide for us of what we've asked for. You've done it, and you've done an amazing job. I suppose the key is what we look for are improvements. But what I really appreciated was your honesty when asked some tough and difficult questions, that you were just honest about it. One thing with us who have been brought up on it, you're looking at many of us who've had decades in this space, know a lot of the history of what happened in Taranaki, especially around the land confiscations, that others don't. And a big portion of our society today don't know. But when we look at the signing of Te Tiriti o Waitangi in 1840, and then within a 50-year period, over 5 million acres of land was confiscated. What we say is, again, and you can find this with PKW, when they speak about the 1.3 million acres of land that was confiscated through legislation. And then in the early 1900s, the Crown came into ownership of 99% of the South Island and approximately 96% of the North Island, through laws, through confiscation, that today we are still navigating through. I want to talk about how this particular report is how those who are looking to purchase it have been waiting for 18 months. And again, I'll keep reinforcing that we as a people been waiting for over 180 years. And the chair is right. We don't think about the amount or the parcel of land. We just think about land. Because I suppose it's easy to talk about it when you've never lost it. But when you come from a people that were disenfranchised and dispossessed, what we feel is that any piece of land that's so sacred to our well-being that has been taken from us, and then we see that going through a process of someone else attaining that. That's the reason why we ask these questions, not so much for our understanding, but for yours. Now, I agree with Councillor Brown that this is a really good example of us improving our systems, on us allowing ourselves to be more educated, because as the Mayor said, when we're talking about we're going to be selling and buying land all the time, it's just the understanding of that historic context. And that there you can find within organisations that are here in Taranaki, including Māori scholars and Māori expertise, Māori experiences with regards to the predated history and lead up to what we see now. What I do understand is that there are parcels of land here that the MPDC look to, that for me, I'm curious about it, so I'll let you all know. When we look at land that's under Māori reserve land, and then all of a sudden it was originally it's Māori reserve land, and then it goes into, let's say, recreational reserve. I'd like to know how that happened, because then we start understanding that there were processes in place to take more land. The fact that we had Māori land set aside for us that was still being sold off. And again, to provide context for those who may not know, that's the reason why we're so passionate about understanding how council, how the Crown come into these lands, because it was taken from us. Not many people knew about the history of the airport and how that land was taken. Not many people know or knew before even coming on to council about the history of Hickford Park, but we'll save that when that comes up, no doubt. But once you start understanding, then you start looking at ways to improve what we've got. The reason why I want to commend our staff is because this is a huge improvement and you're only at the beginning stages. And I'm excited to see what else you can provide us to educate the elected members, but more importantly, add to our history of the land. So we can, as a community, have more understanding when it comes to issues or items on the agenda like this. So I'm open in terms of making a decision with regards to this, because I feel like you've done an amazing job in providing a real depth, and you should be commended for that. And I think moving forward, it's only going to get better. Kia ora.
Denny, thanks very much for that. It was great. I think what I've done is I haven't followed the rules so far in regards to was questions of clarification, and then we're supposed to have a mover and a second, but we've gone straight into the debate, and I do apologise for everybody that, because it's my fault. But just as I think there's been questions of clarification, and we've had a debate. I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder now to the motion. That could I have? Could you give me the options? Because I don't have it in front of me. Options 1 and 2. Julie, please.
Sure. So option 1 is the recommendation that appears on page 10 of your agenda. Option 2A is to decline to stop the road, and option 2B is grant a road encroachment licence. Now, Mayor Holdham.
Option 1 again?
Option 1 was the recommendation before you to approve the road stopping. Mayor Holdham has his hand raised, and Councillor Brown has his hand raised.
Thank you very much. Mayor Holdham?
Yeah, look, I was going to propose option 1. I think it's been a good discussion, and I think the the reality is there are some pretty major issues at play, and I agree with our CEO that I don't believe it's appropriate that we do it, you know, piece by piece, that we should actually just sit back and have a discussion about the way forward. That you're aware that the current Local Government Act prevents what Matua Howie and what Ngāti Te Whiti have requested in terms of the proceeds of the sale going back to mana whenua. And I think, you know, this council is working hard, I believe, to reflect its values of partnership. But I think we're going to, at some point in time, have to come to a real, well, we're going to have to determine how it is that we can have disagreements as well. And the concern is that, I mean, historically, where we haven't been able to get agreement, people have had to wait. And I accept the comments that for Māori, this has been going on for close to 2 centuries. But we're going to have to find a way forward that we can work together, and a safe place and a safe space to have disagreements at times, because I don't think those relationships have got to a point where we feel comfortable disagreeing in issues, really. And I think if you think about the issues that we've had in the past few years, I mean, we've essentially, NPDC has done everything it could to pretty much agree with the recommendations that have come through from iwi and hapu in all matters. And I see Jackie's doing what my daughter does when I say something that she doesn't like or agree with. But this again is the issue, is if we are talking about a true partnership, and I just speak from experience, I have what I call a true partnership with my wife, and it is safe for us to have disagreements. Generally, she is right, and I'm coming to learn that, and that's probably why we have a good marriage. But occasionally, I have some small victories, and she comes to realise that occasionally, while she was right, circumstances have changed. So I think that we should look to work out how we can have the wider discussion, but I would urge that we look, let's not drag our amazing property team into, I felt that Dee was put in a really difficult position because she was being asked to answer questions that are better answered by myself and the CEO and others. And, you know, she's doing a fantastic job. We're trying to lift the bar all the time. But I think that in the interests of partnership, let's recognise the intent of this council is to live up to the values that we've put down as a core of our LTP and our decision making, and we're working to improve our performance and serve everybody. So I would urge you all to support this, and then we can find some time when we can actually get in a room in private and have some discussions about, you know, how we move forward and how we discharge our obligations to everybody and deliver on our commitment to be a good treaty partner.
Was there someone else who want to make a comment?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, could I just clarify, Mayor Holdham, were you moving a motion?
Moving one. Moving one.
I'm happy to second.
I seconded it.
Oh.
Okay.
Sorry, you can have the next one.
So, Mr. Chair, Mr. Matuku and Ms. King have got their hands up.
Okay. Well, Mr. Matuku, welcome to the meeting. Sorry I couldn't sort of get you in there for a while, so but I'm really glad that you've been able to join us. So Brent?
Who's on mute?
Come on, Brent.
Sorry, got a new work phone and I'm just working through some issues. Can people hear me okay?
Yeah.
Oh, kia ora. Thank you, Julie. Kia ora koutou, everyone. I've been with the meeting the whole time. Thank you, everyone, for your input. I just, 2 things. I agree. The staff there are doing incredible. They're trying really hard. in an organisation that is got its issues. It's good counsel, don't get me wrong, but there's historical legacy issues in there. Craig and Neil touched on the conversations that are ongoing at the moment around land sales and the process, and you mentioned conversations that are happening with Te Aotearoa at the moment. Are you able to clarify and be specific about that process? Are there any dates, Hui's meetings, how long is this process going to take? Are we able to be part of it to Hui ngā Taumatua about how these pieces of sale of land come up? And because I think it's a big issue. It's going to come up just about every meeting. And whilst this paper is a vast improvement on previous ones, I think unless we get to a point where all of the partners agree with the process, the current process, then we're always going to have difficulty pushing things through in a timely manner for mana whenua and the people that live within ngā motu. So I guess my question then is can we have some clarification around the discussion and what's happening around the process of sale and purchase of land before I feel comfortable to vote?
Matua Howie, I'm happy to answer that if you like.
Yes, please. Really.
Yeah, kia ora, Brent. Look, to be fair, the discussions are in their infancy. This started to kind of raise itself as an issue towards the end of last year, and we had, as I say, we've got multiple bits of land all across the region where we are, in various stages of discussion with different iwi and hapu. A number of them were in the Ngā Mutu area, so I just before Christmas contacted Dion. We got together for a coffee in January, and all we've done is had an opening discussion. We kind of talked about the issue, the wider strategic picture, if you like, and the fact we needed a principles-based approach to this rather than a case-by-case approach. And we agreed we would get together. Not long after that, we were kind of back into kind of red and working from home kind of situation. We agreed it needed to be a face-to-face meeting. Very happy to take members' advice on how wide that should be, who should be at the table. But no, we haven't got dates yet. In answer to your question, we haven't got dates yet. We're just waiting to see what happens with the COVID situation so we can lock something in. Kia ora.
Julie, was there anybody else who wanted to say something?
Jackie's got her hand up, and then Councillor Brown.
Thank you. Jackie?
You're
Jackie.
on mute. You're on mute, Jackie.
Oh, that was helpful. Thank you. Just building on Brent's points, actually, I think fundamentally this issue isn't going away. And certainly we raised these issues last year because of what was coming up in terms of land sales to our table. So it's appropriate that we get this nailed, because I think what we've seen today is that there's some real discomfort about this process. And I guess the point I wanted to make before we lead into a vote is I can't support something that the hapu has raised serious concerns around. And to be able to address that, we need to deal with the process, and we need to get around the table and nut out a way forward sooner rather than later. So that would apply to both this paper and the next one, clearly, because Manukurihi have raised concerns as well.
Thank you. Someone else had their hand up?
Me.
Yeah, Gordon, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Harry. Good discussion, points noted, I think, by everyone around the table. Just draw everyone's attention. This is year 6 of the existence of this committee. We wouldn't have had this report in the last 5 years. We wouldn't be having this discussion now. We are progressing. And while I understand the frustrations, and sometimes it doesn't appear we are making a difference to how council addresses things. This committee was the first one with iwi members that has decision making delegated to it. And well done, me and Neil, That's not a bad legacy to leave as a district. Not that I suggest he's going anywhere soon. I know the elections are in October, but I'm sure he'll do well should he stand. But to get back to the point, you have to realise that, yes, discomfort is all around the table as we address issues. But that's because we're working in a confined area of where we can go and where we can't go. That's legislation, it's law. Our hands are tied to a certain extent. But despite that, we are still progressing. And the only small reminder I'd make to everybody in the committee, when the time comes for us to have this hui and sit around the table and make some real policy decisions that will make a difference, then we all need to be there as much as possible. We need to be available. We have to do the mahi together to get the outcome we all want. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Councillor Moiahu's got his hand raised.
Tony.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair. I think I love having discussions like this. I love hearing the points of views because it allows us each to broaden our scope, to broaden our knowledge, but more importantly is that it's actually okay to agree to disagree. When we're talking about divulging information and understanding the historic context towards anything to do with land, that should be a given to staff. And staff, you're going to be part of a bigger discussion. And if it's uncomfortable, just know that it's really about the processes, the system itself. It's not about our people. It's not about our staff. But as long as you can be open and honest with regards to just saying, we don't know. I would more appreciate that than having someone give me a second-guessed answer. And that's why it's really important for you to know how much, firstly, I appreciate the honesty and I appreciate the history. When we look at doing this, I also can remember that there was another committee formed prior to Huinga, where iwi Taumatua got access on all issues, on all council matters. And I know them because one of them that was on that committee was my father. And so they got the full scope of what was happening on council matters. This, to Huinga, I see as an improvement from that. And what I see in terms of reading the history that Te Huinga asked for is an improvement on that. Regardless of the outcome, regardless of the decisions that are made in this council, what we look for in an imperfect system is how can we improve processes? How can we improve our knowledge base? How can we further educate ourselves to understand our district's history? Because when we do that, we all then have the ability to make better decisions around the council table. I'll leave it there, but I just want to commend everybody who's had this discussion because I think it's been a healthy one and a respectful one. Kia ora.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Puay has her hand raised.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, kia ora papa Howie. Tēnā koutou, through you, our chair. I just want to tautoko Jackie's stance. Kia ora, everybody. And is the chat not there intentionally? Oh, you removed it on purpose. Is that so we can't chat? Oh, well, that's dumb, but but understandable. So I wanted to support Jackie and her stance with regards to not being able to vote on it without the hapu. I mean, I can't. Ngāti Māori will abstain on this, and I'll just lower my hand. But I am watching this space, and I'm particularly interested in the way that the Plymouth District Council is going to deal with whenua issues, take whenua, particularly because you own my driveway and my marae, and I'd like to buy it back for $1. So just putting that out there in this forum as well, and in this hui. So I'm giving you a big heads up about that. There is an application already, ongoing conversations happening, I believe, with your people in mind, including my marae trustees who I have delegated to follow that piece of work through with. So as the acting chair of my marae, I'm just letting you know, this council, that you actually own my driveway to get from the bridge onto my marae in Tarasa, and we only have one marae. Also reminding everybody, this time last week, the third reading for the Ngāti Māori land claim went through at Parliament. So that's great news for all of us. So I'm really excited about moving forward with all of the New Plymouth District Council, all of our iwi relations as well. Hence why I'm watching this space, listening with intention to how we are going to deal with this issue in terms of Ngā Take Wenua, but also everything to do with all of us, everyone in our rohe of North Taranaki, so we can live harmoniously, happily, and everybody can work together. I'm all about that. So whilst I'm about protecting my asset for my uri and for all of the unborn Ngāti Māori mokopuna to come, I'm also about sharing resources for the betterment of everybody. But I'm just coming through with tautoko to what Jackie said. Ngāti Māori will abstain on the vote. I'm neither here, I'm not going against it. I'm also can't vote for it at this point in time. Ka pai, say back to you, Papa Howie. Kia ora tātou.
Thank you, Tanzan. Lovely to hear from you and get your point of view as well. Yeah, so thank you very much. Is there anybody else who wants to make a comment? Because I'd like to probably give some reflections on this corridor today as well, on this matter.
No further speakers.
Okay. First of all, in regards to the council officers who report to us, there's that old saying, don't shoot the messenger. You know, this, and I thought everybody today was very respectful towards Dee. It may have been uncomfortable for her, but sometimes our conversations do get a bit lively and enthusiastic, as long as it's not depreciating anybody anyway. So to the council officers, we have no issues with you. You have a job to do and you report as well as you can to us to have the information from the perspective of the New Plymouth District Council. Fundamentally, I can't agree with the sale. For as small as the land is, it's still land that was taken, I thought illegally. But what I have enjoyed today is the fact that we can have this robust conversation. My experience with the New Plymouth District Council and being on council for quite a long time was one that we really couldn't have conversations like this. We weren't used to it. We weren't, I suppose, in a position from the Māori committee of that time, in a position to maybe have the confidence to actually raise things, as bluntly and as forcefully as we can do today. And I think that's a really, really good improvement. I mean, no one has been hurt, no one was assaulted, all that sort of thing. But I do remember some good lectures done by Matua Peter as well in regards to his presentations. He's always been on track like that. That, for me, I guess what we're trying to do is to put a stick in the ground, to say, hey, there were things that were done wrong. And at the moment, there's legislation and there's laws and rules, etc., that allows this opportunity to take more land. But from my perspective, you know, the fact is that we've had this conversation, it's been honest and it's been open. So I wanted to tell you how I'm feeling in regards to it. I just see it as an opportunity, just as my cousin Vinny has done to speak as he has done today, in regards to how Māori feel about it. The picture that that we have of the world in regards to what's happened in our past and now where we want to be in the future. So this will get through the various committees of council, and it'll probably get to the approval stage, and it'll be what it'll be. But from the perspective, I would like to think from the perspective of Te Huinga Taumatua, this is our opportunity to stand up for our people, our iwi, our hapu, and say we don't want to do this. We don't want to sell that land. We'd like that land back. So that's all I've got to say, really. But there's the key thing is that is how we've approached it and how we've talked about it has been what I think is really positive anyway. So that's all I have to say on that. Are we ready to move now? In terms of the mayor has moved, it's been seconded by
Councillor Brown.
How do you call a division? Sorry, I'm not, but that's basically what we've got on the table, isn't it, Julie?
Yes, you just asked to call a division.
Oh, can I call a division?
And that's the chair's
Yes.
call, but yep. Okay.
Yes.
So members, when I call your name, if you could answer yes or no. Just being clear that we are voting, or you are voting, on the recommendation set out on page 10 and 11 of your agendas. If you could answer yes or no. Matua Tamati?
No.
Councillor Brown?
Yes.
Councillor Moiahu? Oh, Councillor Moiahu? Denny?
Undecided.
Oh. Okay.
What?
I'll come back.
Yeah, come back.
Come back to you, right?
Councillor Carlson?
Yes.
Councillor Bublitz?
Yes.
Mayor Holdham?
Yes.
Ms. O'Carroll is absent. Ms. King?
No.
Ms. Pue? Tamsin?
I think she made it that she was abstaining.
Abstaining, yep.
Okay. Mr. Matuku?
No.
Councillor Moiahu?
Yes.
It is carried.
Okay. So we move now. So that's it.
Yes, move to tab 2.
Tab 2, page 30.
Sorry, are you sure? Because I was counting them. It looked like it was a draw. Julie. I've got 5-5.
The D is abstention.
Did you have an abstention there, didn't you?
So I have councillors, members, sorry, I have a yes vote from Councillor Brown, Councillor Moiahu, Councillor Carlson, Councillor Bublitz and Mayor Holdham.
Yeah. I
have no's from Matua Tamati, Ms. King and Mr. Matuku.
Okay. Hello, thank you.
No worries. Okay, we'll go to tab 2 now. page 30, road stopping and disposal, joining owner, uninformed, legal road, reserve, Clifton Drive. So can we have an officer's report, please?
So kia ora. The matter before you is a recommendation for a road stopping and disposal at 2 King Street, which is on the corner of King Street and Clifton Drive in Waitara. This will be again completed under the Local Government Act. And the same as the one before, the piece of road reserve in question is not used as road, and it has not been used as public road for some time. Its use as a public road in future is not required or realistically feasible. It is essentially being privatised by encroachments by the adjoining owner. So any questions on this one?
Could I ask a question? When you say it's being privatised by the neighbour?
By the adjoining owner. So they've got a fence up and are using that road, that bit of road that they're purchasing. They're already using. They've got a fence already on that bit of road reserve.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, it's been privatised.
Ms. King has her hand raised.
So just a question, also a comment, but I'll leave that for later. But with the encroachments that occur like this, obviously it's occurring on land that it shouldn't be. So is there a council process to ensure that there's some sort of penalty applied for this, for continued encroachment?
Yes, so there is. The transportation team have people who deal with encroachments on road reserve. I believe there are some historical encroachments, but people can apply for an encroachment licence to encroach on road reserve, and there is a process for that. Yes.
Councillor Jordan.
Thank you. Can I inquire how many habitable dwellings on the adjoining piece of land?
They've got 3 dwellings on that piece of land.
Thank you.
No further. Jackie, you've got your hand up. Is that a no further questions?
Okay. We'll move to the mover and the seconder.
Can we just make a, can I just raise something, Mr. Chair?
Is it by way of question? Because we can go into, we'll move and second and go into debate after.
So sorry to interrupt, Chair, but just a reminder that you have a consensus decision-making approach. So you, for this committee, are welcome to discuss before you finally move and second.
Oh, good, good. I didn't want to break the laws. I want to break the laws. Okay. Jackie?
So, sorry, just very similar issue to the previous one, but what I did think was of particular importance to us is that Manukurahi were asking the questions that we've been asking here today. So, in their feedback to council, I don't know if people have read that yet, but it's essentially those issues around when public road reserve or when council are selling this land, because encroachments have occurred or because that land is no longer of use to them, what kind of process there needs to be in play to have that land either returned to the iwi or hapu, or my suggestion would be that there needs to be some sort of arrangement where financial benefit is derived from it that does similar things. So I think we've just got to recognise that encroachment is essentially a confiscation creep for some Māori, and that's why it's challenging to be asked to support a sale when it's often come about as a result of someone taking what's not theirs.
Councillor Moeahu.
Kia ora, can I just ask, what would happen if we grant a road encroachment licence?
So we could grant an encroachment licence and they would just be able to continue to use that land. However, we have a willing purchaser. We don't need that land as road. So in our encroachment policy, it is the preferred option to sell unused road reserve where it's not ever going to be used as road or it's not required for road. So that is the preference in our encroachment policy.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown. You're on mute.
Just for some context on this issue, following up from Jackie, how many encroachments throughout the district are there?
I'm sorry, I'm not in a position to comment on that. It's not my department.
All right, well, I'll answer my own question. I believe there's more than 600 in the district that we've been told at previous meetings. So it's hardly an exception. And historically, there's been so many. I understand there's a team working with them. Maybe Craig could verify what I'm saying, because I think it's important. Cheers.
Yeah, through you, Taumatua Howie, Councillor Brown's correct. There are, to my knowledge, something in the order of 600 encroachments throughout the rohi. They vary from roading to back gardens to fences, all kinds of things, trees, gardens. We have resourced in the last couple of years a small team of 2 whose network transportation officers whose job is to identify those encroachments, approach the owners and put in place appropriate licenses for them. I can speak from experience because I bought a house that has an encroachment on it, so I pay my fee. So yeah, there are a number of them around the district, and we do have a process.
Any other questions? Yep.
So knowing that we've got these variety of encroachments, so is the main reason why this is recommended, the option is recommended, is purely because we have a willing buyer?
No, they could continue with an encroachment if they wanted, but the main reason is it's never going to be used for road. Some encroachments are granted because it could be in the future that we may want that as road, or it may, so we may not even consider that we would stop a piece of road if it was ever foreseen that may be used as road or required for access in any way. So when we look at a road stopping, there's a process that we go through to see, is the road wide enough with that sale? Is it ever going to be used for road? Is it ever going to be required for access? And sometimes we simply say we won't proceed with this application because this particular piece of, and even if they're encroaching on it, we may want that in the future.
Okay, thank you.
There's no further hands up.
All right. So we'll move to a mover and a seconder. All right. So what are the options, Julia? I haven't got them in front of me.
Option 1 is to stop that part of Clifton Drive. Option 2A is decline to stop the road, and option 2B is to grant a road encroachment. And the recommendation is to stop the road.
Okay. Could I have a mover?
Mayor Holdham has raised his hand.
And the seconder?
Councillor Bublitz.
Councillor Bublitz.
What option?
Option 1.
Option 1, I would say. I'm sorry, I've been presuming.
Yes. Yep. The recommendation on pages 30 and 31.
Yep.
And can I call a division again, please?
Ken, thank you. Just checking through the chair that there's no further debate on the issue. Doesn't appear to be.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, if members, you could answer yes or no when I call your name. Matua Tamati?
No.
Councillor Brown,
Yes.
Councillor Moyahu,
Yes.
Councillor Carlson,
Yes.
Councillor Bublitz,
Yes.
Mayor Holdham,
Yes.
Ms King,
No.
Ms Pue,
No.
Mr Matuku.
No.
It is carried.
Okay. Right. So we're done with that one.
Yes.
So tab 3 has been withdrawn. Julie?
Yes, that's
Yes.
correct.
Okay. So we'll move on to tab 4, page 63. Yeah.
Yes.
Then initial decision on the annual plan. Could we have an officer to report on that, please?
Kia ora, Matua. So this report seeks Council to determine contents for the annual plan 2022-23. So we've based it on the long-term plan 2021-2031 for us year 2. So the initial decisions we've proposed are in line with the forecast, in particular for the total rates increase at 7%. So there's quite a wide range of projects and initiative planned for the next year. Iwi and Hapu involved in the planning processes for a number of projects already, and there'd like to be others in the annual plan that Iwi and Hapu will become involved with as appropriate. The report also now has attached to it an appendix on initiating rates remission postponements to provide some support to the community in light of the COVID-19 Omicron outbreak. Just one correction in that appendix. So we stated in that there was no budgeted impact of raise penalties, but unfortunately, this isn't the case. We budgeted around 90k per quarter for raise penalty, but there was not significant uptake and similar policies following the first COVID-19 lockdown. So we still believe that it's not going to have a significant budgetary impact. There is quite a range of officers available to answer any questions you might have on the annual plan, or indeed on any of the community board recommendations. Just effectively fire them through, and Craig, Julie and myself will direct as appropriate to various staff.
So done. Is there any questions for clarification on the report from the officer?
Councillor Bublitz.
Thank you. On Appendix 1, which is page 91, the top line, customer and regulatory solutions, we're adding $2 million additional rates funding from LTP. Was that $2 million budgeted for to be within the 7% rate increase at the beginning of the LTP cycle?
No, it's been absorbed with other adjustments, Councillor, as a result of the adjustment for LTP year 2. A big portion, just further to that, through you, Chair, a big portion of that $2 million hit is, of course, $1 million of revenue that the building consent team won't be generating to subsidise rates. Of course, we had no knowledge 18 months, 2 years ago, and put together the LTP that we were going to be in the middle of another COVID lockdown. So that's a major part of it. And then there's a number of other minor adjustments, I think all of which have been provided to members in the last 48 hours, both of this committee and the wider council and community boards.
Supplementary, please.
Yes.
So if there was no reduction because of works and those types of things that have happened within this annual plan budget, you're saying that $2 million would have gone on top. So that's effectively 2% of rate. So that would have gone straight on top of the 7% if there was no other changes to the budget?
In theory, yes, you could look at it that way, Councillor. But clearly we weren't going to let that happen because we've gone to the community with a 7% increase, and council were adamant that's where they wanted us to land. So was always going to be adjustments. I mean, there are literally dozens of adjustments. In Appendix 1 on page 91, members outlines the high level totals for those, but there are literally dozens of lines that make those up.
Last one from me, please. Is it normal to have a 2% differential in budgets when we're doing plans in terms of long-term plan and annual plans? Is there I suppose what I'm getting at, a year ago we signed off that this was happening, and then a year later we've got another $2 million on the operational costs. And to me, I'm unsure how that can happen over the space of a year. Like $2 million is quite a lot.
Yep, admittedly it is. And the short answer to your question is yes, it's entirely normal to have variances in year 2 of the LTP. And you know, there are a number of circumstances contributing to that, as have been outlined in the emails that have gone around recently. So it's not out of the way. You've got to remember we've got a $190 million operating budget. So the 2.2 million is still a reasonably small percentage of that. Yes, it's a lot of money, and I don't want to trivialise that in any way, but actually in percentage terms, it's reasonably small.
The issue is that it's 2% of rates.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the issue.
Which is 120 million. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sila Moeahu.
Kia ora, thank you. Just following up with Councillor Bublitz, just in terms of the variances that you've described, will we be expecting more variances for year 3, 4 and 5?
I would say it's inevitable through you, Matua. Yes, it's inevitable, particularly in the high inflation environment we're running at the moment. I mean, you've seen members the inflation figures and where they're projected to go for the next couple of quarters. We hope that's a spike. That's what the economists are telling us, but it may not be. So yep, and the other unknown, of course, is where COVID will go next. I was reading earlier today, there's a new variant out that's meant to be far more transmissible than Omicron. So we just don't know. But I would say you can undoubtedly expect some further adjustments in year 3. That's always the year, because it's furthest away from adoption of the long-term plan itself, where there is the greatest degree of flexibility and adjustment required.
Okay. Just to follow up to that, when we look at, so there's a real possibility that there'll be variances, but I suppose when it comes to sustainability, when would be a point where these variances get to a stage where we need to start having a real serious discussion around what projects that we actually can complete and what projects that we can't complete without significant increases in rates? Do you have an idea?
Yeah, through you, Matua, I guess. You know, ultimately there could be a point where we have to get to that. Bear in mind the CapEx program is a different beast. The amount of money we're going to spend on capital, therefore the projects you're talking about, Councillor Moeahu, is a slightly different issue. But what we've got in year 3 is a very clear rating profile, just like we've got in year 2, and officers will endeavour to match that. If we came back to the council and said we can't do it, here's the increases, which means it's impossible, then we'd have to start making some hard decisions. I don't think we're going to be in that position, because for the extra expenses we are incurring, there's also some savings. And one of those has been in interest rates, because we haven't had to borrow as much as we expected. Therefore, the debt servicing is lower. So that immediately is an offset. So got to remember, there's all kinds of pluses and minuses go into these adjustments.
One final question is just around, because when we look at the 10-year plan, what we are also looking at is that in year, it starts to taper off and those rate increases start to drop off. Is that still the expected projection with regards to the rates that'll be declining? The rates will be declining heading into later in the year?
Through you, Chair, yes, it is still the expectation, Councillor, but of course remember we get every 3 years we get to entirely review our LTP. So the whole point of that, the government put that in place, is so that we can not get caught out with 10-year projections that just escape reality, really. So every 3 years we get to revisit the whole next 10 years.
Okay, thank you.
There are no hands up.
Oh. So there's no more discussion. So shall we move this? Looking for the mover and a seconder. Yes, Julie.
Yes, but there are no hands up. Oh, Mayor Holdham.
Thank you, Mayor.
And seconded Councillor Brown.
Councillor Brown. They're busy. Okay. So can you bring the options, please?
So the recommendations as set out on pages 63 and 64, or which are the initial decisions, or agree to make minor changes, or agree to make significant or material changes.
Yeah, so I was looking to move option 1.
Option 1. Thank you, Matt. Right. So all those in favour of option 1, signal.
Are we going to debate?
Oh, I thought we had the discussion. Sorry, Denny, thank you for bringing me back to earth. Yes, let's have a debate. You start because you're a good debater.
Thank you. I didn't move the motion, but I'd recommend if His Worship would like to kick things off, that'll be great.
Okay, there you are, losing my way again.
Oh, we've got 3 chairs. Yeah, no, I don't really have anything to add.
So I thought so. Is there anybody else like to talk?
Councillor Moya, who?
Thank you very much, Julie. I can't see you.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair, and what a powerful opening from His Worship. I think it's very difficult as an elected member when we get additional information and descriptions on certain aspects of an annual plan or a long-term plan within 48 hours, and it's compounded when we're seeking to understand how another increase of 2% has come into play. Now, there has been the opportunity for us to meet with some of our council staff to find more understanding with regards to these additional costs. However, it's manoeuvred into the long-term plan that still meets the requirement. But the frustrations, I suppose, as an elected member is when we get this information and then when we read the report and then we've got to make either a recommendation with regards to this information while we're dissecting it. It's a tough pill to swallow, to be fair. And I think in terms of we've got another couple of processes to go through before this gets to a final decision making. And I'm struggling with the ongoing emails that we receive to actually grasp this more without actually meeting up with the appropriate council staff to guide us through the information that they've provided us. And I think that's a concern that not only I have, but a few elected members as well, taking into consideration the emails that we've all received and the fact that there is a welcoming to invite us all to get further understanding. With that, I think if we were to be prudent, I know that in strategy and operations, it was a challenging decision to make. And then getting back the feedback and having more questions than answers, I suppose, it's starting to leave a not too comfortable taste in my mouth. So on that note, I think it's important that everyone on this panel, if you get the opportunity to have a say, because I don't think this is going to be the end, but more conversations need to be had before we make the final decision. Kia ora.
Thank you, Jenny. Julie, is there any other?
Yeah, Councillor Bublitz.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Matua. Yeah, I won't be supporting this today. I'm not entirely, I'm I'm not entirely convinced of the reasoning for the $2 million increase. I know that Ms. Turner has tried her very best to explain it to me, but I'm still a little bit unsure about some of the numbers, and I'm happy she's offered to take it offline, which I'm going to do. And until I get a little bit more of a clearer picture around it, I won't be supporting this so today, but hopefully by our next round, it'll all be clarified and I'll be happy as Larry and we can continue as planned. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair and Julie. Just a reminder to councillors that there's plenty of time between now and the next council meeting. This is a recommendation only. Yes, there's been new information added. You've got plenty of time to sit down, talk to the council officers, and have an understanding of what they entail, and then the decision will be made at the council meeting. So that's where the actual decision is made. Today is a recommendation from T. Huinga. Thank you.
No further hands are up.
Okay, Julie. So we'll move to the motion. Yeah.
Yes.
And it's been moved by Richard the Mayor. You've got anything else to say before we do, Mayor?
I just do what I'm told, Chair.
I don't think so.
Matua Howie, can I make a comment before the committee vote?
Yes, for sure.
There's just something I feel duty bound to point out. I can't remember who made it. It was a comment made earlier. It was an additional 2% of rates. Actually, it's not. We have come in on exactly the profile that council went public with in its LTP, which is a 7% total rates increase. So the pluses and minuses that I talked about before on page 91 are all worked into that. It's nothing different to what we went out with 9 months ago with a long-term plan. I just wanted to make that very clear. Kia ora.
Thank you.
Chair,
So
can I just have a question of clarification?
Yeah, for sure. No
way. Just this is directed at the CEO. I understand that we've met what we've required with regards to the rates rise, but I'm just wondering, that was also part of us moving some of the projects outside of year 2. Is that also part of the reason why?
No, I'm just looking for Joy or one of my team who's a bit more across the detail. I don't believe that we've, hang on, let me just find the table again, members. I've moved on to a different part of the report. So if we go back to page 91, which is where the summary table is, it says there changes to operating and capital expenditure. Joy, can you throw any light on this one for Councillor Morgan?
Yeah, so the table, sorry, through you, Chair, the table on page 91 has an outline of the movements in operating expenditure under the different activities at a high level. So within that, there has been changes within the operating expenditure. If you go through to the next few pages, we go through with some of the movements that have happened across the different projects that we've got, some of the capital projects. We've had movements in some of those projects. So some of those have been pushed out through some timelines. There are some emergency budgets that we've revisited and decided we don't necessarily need. There are a few new projects that have come in that we have added, as well as a few that we've moved forward, such as the stormwater or the thermal dryer because of funding, and a few things with cash flow movements. So we've tried to articulate in these appendices those movements of projects. So as you are aware, we have got hundreds of projects on the go across the whole organisation, and we are monitoring them, but we're just basically trying to show you what's changed between the plan and the LTP clearly in these slides. So obviously there is a little bit of flow on effect that does come out in our annual plan, and as Mr. Stevenson has outlined, you have got some movements across quite a number of activities, but at the end of the day, we still come out at that 7%, which was the important thing that we promised to our community, that we would come in at that 7%. And we've had some of these delays, but we're trying to articulate that movement at a high level to you in this report.
Thank you for the answer, Joy. Just probably a follow-up to that. When we talk about a flow-on effect, I suppose if we're doing this and setting aside for next year, is there an expectation that next year will also have a flow-on effect that'll lead into year 4, that'll lead into year 5? Is there a trend? Are we at the beginning of a trend? So I just want to make sure we just need just some clarity. Are we expecting a flow-on effect going into year 3 as well?
Yes, you would expect a flow-on effect. So you can imagine you've got big projects. They don't just finish as at the 30th of June. You might have deliveries that are late and things that overrun. So we do carry projects forward into the following year. And things like resource consents might not be granted, they've been delayed. So we will move projects over. And so you will see in the capital expenditure program, we're probably expecting 20, 25 million to be carried forward from one year to the next. I mean, it is something in local government that is very typical, where you have large structure projects that won't be complete at the year-end balance date. So you need to move those forward, that we need to complete these for our projects. Often we're partway through, sometimes it's small, sometimes it's big, but it's about making sure we're still committing to delivering those outcomes for the community.
Thank you.
That's a great response. Thank you very much.
Ms. King had her hand up.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry, Denny asked my question, and thanks, Joy, you answered mine. So it was really just the deferral of those projects and how they're going to impact, future years. But I see even one of the examples, I think, was the Kaitaki Trail, which is being proposed as being cancelled, but then there's provision basically referenced for 2024, 2025. So
Sorry, Jackie. Is there anybody else wishing to?
No further speakers.
No further, right? Well, can we then move on to, can you give us the options in regards to the...
So you have a motion on the table, Mr. Chair, and that is option 1, which is set out on page 63 and 64 of your agenda.
So could we have a mover, please?
You have a mover and a seconder. It's been moved by His Worship and seconded by Councillor Brown.
Great, thank you. Working well together today. I'm very impressed. So
teamwork makes the dream work.
So all those in, so we've got the option as option 1?
Yeah, correct.
Yep.
Correct.
Okay. So all those in favour of option 1, could you signal to Julie in regards to where you are? So those in favour? No.
1, 2, 3, 4. The hands that I can see. 5. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 in favour.
Those against?
1, 2. Oh, sorry, the screen keeps shifting. I think those against were 1, 2, 3. And I note Miss O'Carroll's online, but I can't see an image.
Julie, I'm not against.
Okay. I think that
against.
I think that was a 2 then, 2 against.
Okay,
Perhaps we could do it by voice, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Maybe easier.
Yep.
If members were to unmute and you called the vote again.
All right. So let's do that. Is everybody unmuted now?
Mr. Matuku's muted. Okay. Yes, we're good to go.
I'll go first. I'll go yes. Yeah. Option 1.
Yes.
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 We're getting there. Anybody else?
No.
Those
No.
against?
No.
Too nice.
Should have just called a division.
I think you carried.
Division. Okay. Right, so option 1 is the decision?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So we move on to now tab 5?
Correct.
Yes. Page 240, the revocation of the public toilet strategy 2009. Is that right?
Correct.
It sounds very important.
I can assure you that when the time comes, these facilities are critical to the well-being of our community and the safety of our environment.
That's so true, so true. Right. So could we have the officer to give us a report, please?
Is that you, Mitch?
No, it's Mr. Wallen, I believe.
Wallen. Charles.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this report details the revocation of the public toilet strategy. And this strategy dates from the year 2000 and is out of date and no longer relevant. The recommendation has little risk because the strategy was essentially just a list of projects that have either been completed or are now out of date and no longer relevant. Council's processes have changed since the strategy was introduced, and the consideration of new and significant upgrades to public toilets are now considered every 3 years in the long-term plan. If the revocation is approved, the next steps would be to remove the strategy from the Council's strategy register and from the Council's website. If you have any questions, myself and Mitchell Dyer are available to answer those. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you. Is there any questions, please?
Councillor Moya, who?
What a powerful topic to talk about. Question time. Just with regards to its irrelevance, has there been anything to replace this outdated public toilet strategy?
For you, Chair, no, the process is now carried through the long-term plan process.
And I suppose part of it, the reason why is enabling good lives, and there are other aspects of strategies that are formulated where there's a more proactive approach in terms of the building of toilets and facilities appropriate for those who are disabled. Is that a measure that's been implemented once this strategy is removed? Is this a measure that's been implemented into the long-term plan processes?
I'll pass that one over to my colleague, Mitchell Dyer.
Kia ora, Mitch.
Kia ora. Good afternoon, everyone. Through the chair, I would draw your attention to paragraph 8 of the report, and essentially accessibility in terms of improving accessible design location are just standard areas of toilet design now. So basically everything we do in design has got an accessible lens in it. So that's basically good practice that they undertake. Yep. Does that answer your question, Denny?
Yeah, no, that was a good answer. Thank you, Mitch. Just to follow up to that, in terms of, I suppose, the accessibility part, because even when we have accessible toilets, in terms of design, is still ineffective. So I suppose with this accessibility strategy, that's the norm in terms of design. How do we know if it's fit for purpose or not?
Through the chair, I guess it's ongoing rigor in this space in terms of improvements. Yeah, it's my understanding from the property team is they do take it into account. If there's things they're getting wrong, then I would presume they would want to hear that and get it right moving forward.
Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any more questions of the officers?
There are no hands up.
Okay. So we go to the options.
I'm happy to move option 1, Chair.
Thank you.
Second. Julie.
Thank you.
Right. You want a division on this one, or you want a
power straight through as a priority?
All those in favour say aye. Or option 1.
Aye.
Aye.
Come on.
Aye.
That's it. Sounds good. Keep
Aye.
coming.
Aye,
Aye.
All right. Those against. I should have said those against.
It's universal.
There you are. There you are. That was a very, very good one, that one. Okay, so we move now to tab 6, page 258, funding of additional CCTV cameras. All right.
Thank you, Chair. That's me again.
Oh, lucky us. Yeah, thank you.
The report relates to the addition of fires to the New Plymouth City Safe CCTV network. The request comes from the New Zealand Police to tackle antisocial and illegal activities at 2 locations not currently covered by the CCTV network. These are at the East End Reserve and the end of Hobson Street. It's an area that's known more locally as Pig Out Point. The request from the police follows a rise in social and illegal activities at those 2 locations and concerns over the safety of the public after reports to the police about threats to women and children, vehicles stolen and abandoned, disorderly behaviour and drunkenness. And 3 cameras will be installed at the East End Reserve and 2 at Pig Out Point. The recommendation before you is to approve council providing $60,000 from the Agility Fund to pay for the cameras. And again, myself and Mitchell Dyer are available to answer questions. Kia ora.
Right, is there any questions of the officer?
Councillor Bublitz, followed by Councillor Moyahu.
Thank you. We've had a number of complaints from different people and residents from around that area for ever since I've been on council around the nuisance that those young people seem to make down there. My question is kind of aligned a little bit with a comment that Councillor Chong made in our last meeting, and that was 60K for 4 cameras. Is the 60K because it all has to link back up to the CCTV kind of police network, and that's why the price is so high for these?
Pass that one to Mitchell Dyer to answer.
Yeah, look, through the chair, I'm not actually able to answer that. The price is put together by our BTG team who handle all the data and software. Obviously, this is, you're talking about internet connection and data integrity. So that work's done from them. I'm not sure if Steve McIntosh is on today and can help there. But you know,
I can probably help because I was involved with the discussions with the police. It is primarily you've got a significant cost and you've got to get a power and the backhaul line in terms of the IP. I believe that the IT guys and girls were working with the roller sports club, but essentially because the cameras are going to be looking at the car park primarily adjacent to the skate park, which is where the behaviour is concerned. So they're not actually going to be watching the kids skating. They're going to be looking at people abandoning cars there and setting fire to them and smoking weed and all that sort of thing that's been going on there. But they've got to get power to the cameras, and then they've got to get the data back. And so I think that what you're looking at is the significant cost in trenching and cabling between the park and the nearest connection, which I think is at the roller sports club.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good explanation. Is there anybody else who's
My question was answered. Thank you.
Ms. Pouet.
Kia ora, through you, Papa Howie, through the chair. I don't really have any discussion. I'd just like to support this motion and this recommendation. So I'm happy to move it when you get to that point, because as someone who frequents the beautiful spot there, not to do what me and Neil said though, just to eat my KFC and stuff, it would be really good if those cameras are installed there. And also I know about IT cameras as well, and that's not a bad price, to be honest. So I would like to move the motion. Kia ora tātou.
Okay. Well, we've got a mover, but if there's anybody else want to make a comment, because then I'll ask for a seconder.
I'll second.
There are no further comments, but
Tenzin and Lungi.
Yeah, we frequent the place, not for what me and Neil said.
No, I'm sure. I'll give you
I
really
was
short.
talking about the at the skate park as opposed to. We've got to find a better name for Pig Out Point.
Yes, yeah, I'll say.
Intergenerational, nah. But yeah, tautoko. Kia ora tātou.
Okay. So, Julie, just the option one, what does it say exactly? In terms
Option one is providing $60,000 from the Agility Fund for the installation of the additional cameras.
Kapai, and we've had two members of Te Huinga Taumatua, one was Tenzin as the mover and Lungi as the seconder.
Correct.
All right. All those in favour, what do we do? Say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye. Any nays? None. So that is passed. That's all done. Well, that's our meeting over.
No.
No.
Two more to go, Mr. Chair. I do know that you've been going for a couple of hours, and normally about this time we'd recommend a 5 or 10 minute break if you were of a mind to do so, or whether you'd like to push ahead.
Push ahead.
Keep going.
Okay. Then you're up to tab 7, which is the downtown car park.
Oh, okay. So was that. Right. Can we have a report on that, please?
Kia ora koutou. The report before you today is supplementary and provides further information and a revised recommendation to assist in consideration of the future of the downtown car park report. Having considered further analysis and feedback, officers have revised the recommendation in the supplementary report to option 4. Option 4 is recommended for Council to approve the strengthening of the downtown car park to achieve a minimum of 34% new building standard, removal of the earthquake-prone building notice, reopen and operate the car park. Mr. Andrew Barron, as Manager of Infrastructure Projects, is online, and myself as Property Manager are available to answer any questions that you may have. Kia ora.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Councillor Moyahu and Ms. King.
Kia ora. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. My question is just around the options, really. Has there been any consideration taken in terms of either partnering with a property developer or leasing the car park out, as opposed to making the improvements at all?
Yes, so in the main report, the options were to sell the property as is, which was after feedback from Strategy and Operations Committee, it doesn't seem a favoured option. The second one was to reopen and operate the car park without any seismic mitigation or other safety works. That's not advised from a risk perspective. The third option was to do essential safety work to reopen and operate the car park with seismic rating. And that was around getting the minimum safety works done to reopen it, and then to consider in the longer term the future of the car park. I guess feedback came back from workshops, strategy and operations and public in the last 2 months, really, that there is a strong desire to see the use of the car park in the long term as a car park, and it's seen as doing the bit for the CBD, the businesses, the customers, the shoppers, the office users, etc. within the CBD. So there has been strong feedback to carry out the works, the strengthening works, to get it safe and up to 34% removal of the earthquake-prone building notice and to operate it in the long term. So yes, all considerations were taken into account, and that's why we revised the recommendation to option 4, considering that strong feedback.
Sorry, Laura, I might not have interpreted my question properly, but has there been an option to lease the building to, say, either a corporation or something as an option?
Not sure. And through you, Matua, no, there is not a consideration in this report around that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Ms. King and then Councillor Brown.
My question was just around the option 4, actually, was that, and I know it's probably in line with the recommendations that that's a safe rating, but it seems pretty darn low to me. So that's my comment for council. And a question, sorry, the question of council. Why is that not recommended it be higher, given?
Because 34% is recommended in line with the legislation. So that is the new building standard. I think what's important to note about the new building standards is the percentage MBS ratings are a risk comparator, and they relate to the subject building to an equivalent new building. And so that's why that minimum at 34% NBS is set. So that's not MPDC, that's actually the new building standards. The new building standards don't represent an assessment of safety. So for example, in a particular building, there could be the assessment could assess a number of vulnerabilities. It is the lowest vulnerability that sets the new building standard for that, okay? So for example, in a building, all the key elements could come out at well over 50, 60%, and perhaps close to 80%. If one vulnerability is down at 25%, that's where the building is set at that new building standard. Okay, so that's when we say it doesn't represent an assessment of safety. They're not, the MBS rating that we talk about is not a predictor of expected performance in a particular earthquake, because every earthquake is different in terms of the frequency of shaking, etc. So a low percentage MBS rating, really important to stress this, is not intended to prevent people from accessing and occupying the buildings before a mitigation plan with timeframes can be developed and implemented. Okay, so we have to look at that particular vulnerability and assess the risk based on that particular one. So there were two vulnerabilities in relation to the downtown car park, okay? And one of them was in relation to the floors and the lack of capacity to transmit horizontal forces to the walls. That is a key vulnerability in moderate earthquakes. Now, if there was a moderate earthquake, that would likely cause quite a bit of damage. That is the high priority work proposed, or the essential safety work that you will read in the report, okay? The other vulnerability is in relation to brackets and vehicle barriers. And it's actually the seating brackets. If in a significant earthquake, that's very unlikely, it would pose a risk. And that's the phase 2 of works, okay? So that's how we assess the risk on that. And sorry, I've gone a bit off on that, but I just did need to define what MBS ratings are about. So I hope that answers your question, Jackie.
It definitely helped. Thank you, Laura. But I think it helped me understand that, yeah, well, it's I guess a national building standard.
A new building standard, yeah.
Yeah, the new building standard. What's our standard? And I'm assuming, but from what I took from that is
a minimum
one.
Yeah. Laura.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm a wee bit confused. From memory at the strategy and ops, when option 4 from memory was added, I recall it was at a cost of 4 million plus. But I now see that we've got in D as part of the recommendation that a ceiling of 2.98 million, otherwise it has to come back to the council. Why the difference there? What happened to the other cost?
Okay, so are you asking it just to clarify?
Yeah.
Are you talking about the particular breakdown of the recommendations? The recommendation?
I want to know how we got from the strategy and ops motion of 4 point something million for that was voted on the 9th, and then we come back to D as part of the recommendation with a cap of 2.98 million.
Sure.
Because of the phases.
Through you, Matua. Yes, well, what we were asked, what was moved at the strategy and operation, the second part was that the work be fast-tracked and phased to expedite the reopening as soon as possible. So phase 1 is estimated at a cost of 2.06 million. And phase 2 is estimated at 2.98 million, the total being 5.04 million, which was discussed as option 4. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Moya, who has his hand raised. I'm not sure if it's...
Sure is. Oh, it's a question. Kia ora, thank you, Julie. Thank you, Chair. Laura, I am looking on page 397. And it's got on the option 4, and I'm looking at inflation. And on here, it's got a flat inflation of 2.5 all the way up through to 2041. Is that an accurate calculation of an unsettling inflation rate?
Yes, through you, Matua. Supplementary, further information was requested on that. And as part of the supplementary report, we carried out a further analysis at 5% also, which over a long term at 5% average is considered quite reasonable in terms of it's going up at the moment, it will spike and then it will come down. So at 5% under point 15 on the supplementary report, you'll see the returns there.
What part of that? The appendix report?
No, within the main supplementary report, and it's point 15.
Thank you so much.
Page 270.
Sorry,
Thank you.
There are no further hands up.
Okay, so options. What is the option for us, Julie?
So the option before the committee is contained in the supplementary report on page 266, which approves the strengthening.
Happy to move.
So I've just got a question of clarification.
Yes, you can say.
Laura, the question of clarification is just around, is my first question around about that there wasn't an option to look at leasing the building out to a third party, but there wasn't a reason given why. Do you know why that wasn't considered as an option?
Well, I guess it goes back to when we started looking at this, and we were looking at the report in line with the CBD strategy and the importance of that site as a strategic one onto the Awa and in terms of its central city location. And I guess by handing it over, in terms of a lease, apart from the lease terms, we lose a little bit of control from that. As part of the costs in option 4, we would be looking at painting it and softening to the Awa. So I think a strong voice has come over that we want to retain control of the site as much as possible, whilst contributing to its continued use as a car park for the CBD. But I can't answer your question directly in saying that we looked at that option, because we didn't. It brought us on a different route, to be quite honest with you.
Okay. No, because it's interesting with your answer saying that we didn't want to lose control, and yet in option one is to sell the property. So that's why I'm curious, because you would have lost control altogether.
Sure, and I absolutely agree, and that's actually stated in option one. The reason it was asked in the Strategy and Operations Committee why option one was included, and that was because it was questioned. But we did absolutely say the risks involved in that is losing control, and that's throughout that option in the main report.
Thank you.
Mayor Holdham has his hand up.
I was just going to second Councillor Brown's recommendation, which was option 4.
Thank you. So it was moved, Councillor
Brown.
Brown, and seconded by the Mayor. So option
4 is set out on page 266.
Yes. All right. So those in favour?
There may be some debate.
Oh, okay. I thought we were having it there. Sorry, that's right. It was just
never clear.
Getting tight. So now comes the debate.
There are no hands up. Oh no, one hand up. Councillor Moyahu.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Julie. Has anyone seen the movie The Founder? It's with regards to the owner of McDonald's and how his wealth actually grew. He spoke about when it came to the purchasing of land, that was the key, to purchase land, to build a building, and then lease the building. And that's how they grew their wealth. It was fascinating because I would have actually thought, taking that into consideration, one, we don't lose all control as opposed to selling the property as is, two, we get some form of control, but there's the ability to, one, hold on to the land, and two, have the opportunity to just see if this was feasible, see if there's one of our local property moguls that will be able to see this as a benefit and working in partnership with council to, one, get them to open it up, take responsibility, but in essence, we still keep the land, and yet we still get some form of revenue coming from the lease. It's a surprise to me that this wasn't taken into consideration, because I think with more time, you could actually see the benefits, and potentially there could be future partnerships with our community. It's interesting when I look at the inflation and then it being corrected. My advice to council officers is to make sure when we view the inflation, sometimes we can take that for gospel until it's questioned. But ultimately, what I see is that there is another option that's not on here, that hasn't even been considered, where I think is a win-win situation. And we are going to support a recommendation of reinforcing it. But what's the chances of that being open next week? Or what's the chances of building partnerships so it alleviates that pressure? Because where's this funding coming from? Is this going to be debt funded? And with a lot of other projects that we are seeing increasing cost on, where are they going to be funded? This is one of many items that are going to be coming across our table. And it's interesting to me that that just the sheer fact that not even looking at a lease option has been considered. And on that note, I won't be supporting the motion. Kia ora.
Mayor Holdham.
Oh, kia ora. I urge you to support this in looking to find a long-term solution to ensure the limited parking that we have available in the CBD remains available over the long term. We're sending a message to those people that are looking to invest in the CBD that we are committed to paying our part. There was a suggestion by another councillor that we just simply lease the current building that we're aware doesn't meet the minimum safety requirements to a private party that can then open it straight away. And where I come from, we call that a workaround. But the point is, I suppose, from my perspective, I didn't get into local government to do workarounds. We either want our operations to be compliant or we don't. And in my view, we want our operations to be compliant. And we enforce the building code. We're actually a regulator in that regard, and we need to set the example by meeting the standards that we are requiring others to meet. So while I get the attractiveness of an option to do a workaround and get the building open, I don't think it would send the right message. I think actually making the commitment to sort it out for once and for all, and reflecting that, you know, there are other uncertainties with Centre City, etc., is sending the message that we are supportive of those people that are also investing in our CBD, and that it is the place where we want people to come together. And while I get that we're looking to decarbonise, I think that much for certainly for our a great deal of our population, they'll be looking to transition to lower emission vehicles, but they'll still be looking to get in and out of town in vehicles, and we need to be able to find them a safe and available places to park. So just urge you to support this.
Division.
Councillor Brown has his hand up first.
Thank you. Just a quick comment in terms of debt funding that Denny was referring to. The beauty of this capital project is that the business case will undoubtedly show not only full repayment by the net profit coming from the car park, but we will actually make a profit overall. So it's doing the right thing for the right reasons, and it's self-funding, and we'll be able to produce revenue that will hopefully enable us to do other good things in the community as well. So I urge you just to support it. Thank you.
Okay, no further comments? No. Leave it there. It's been moved by Councillor Brown, that option 4. So we've got a division.
We have a division called.
Yep.
So councillors, you're voting on the recommendation contained on page 266 of your agenda. Please answer yes or no when I call your name. Matua Tamati?
Yes.
Councillor Brown?
Yes.
Councillor Moyahu?
No.
Councillor Carlson?
No.
Councillor Bublitz?
Yes.
Mayor Holdham?
Yes.
Ms O'Carroll? Longy may, I know. Longy?
No.
It's a yes. Ms King?
Yes.
Ms Pue?
Yes, and also noting 1E, like Councillor Brown, I agree. Taitukuyu Matua Gordon, kia ora tātou.
Mr Matuku?
Yes.
And it is carried.
Well done. Right. So the last deb of the
Yes.
day? Okay.
Yes.
Julie, could you call that one out for me, please?
Sure. So this is tab 8, which is relating to the granting of a community concessional ground lease for the Taranaki Community Stadium Trust at Jubilee Park in Inglewood.
Okay, committee officer?
Dennis.
Yes, through the chair, the matter before you today for consideration is the granting of a new concessional ground lease for an initial term of 20 years with a 10-year right of renewal. This is actually different from what the report recommendation was to start off with, but the Inglewood Community Board suggested 30 years for the lease, and it's to the Taranaki Community Stadium Trust at Jubilee Park in Inglewood. And this lease will replace a lease which expired in 2020. The new lease will have the same conditions and terms as the expired lease, and the recommendation is that the lease be granted. That's
Okay.
So we have a question from Councillor Moyahu and one from Ms. King.
Councillor
Fiona,
Moy.
thank you. Thank you, Chair. My question is just around, you mentioned about how this lease is different to the last lease. Can you just enlighten us a little bit?
It's just in the term of the number of years. The first lease was for 20 years, 21 years. Okay. And we can actually grant one up to 33 years. So the Inglewood Community Board recommended that it be for 30 years.
Okay, but what was the reason why that was declined?
Why
30 years.
It's not declined, it's recommended now.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
We've got Ms. King. Ms. King.
Sorry, just referencing the engagement that's been had with Te Atiawa on the project and the lease, and they support it through by way of another plan.
Yes,
there was no reference to that plan.
Yeah, when the Sports Parks Management Plan was developed in 2012 and approved, the extensive consultation took place then, and as part of that, what was developed was that the lease will be maintained with the Community Trust and the various entities that are present there at the moment. Yeah, so we were actually, the council is actually obliged to maintain a lease with the Taranaki Community Stadium Trust.
But supplementary to that question, has that plan, which was done in 2012, basically replaced the engagement component with Te Atiawa now? So does that, sorry for me to clarify the question.
Sorry, I can't answer that, sorry. All I know is that the consultation took place. Yeah.
So there's been no consultation with Te Atiawa on the revision of this lease in renewal?
No, the plan that was developed was the engagement.
The plan that was developed in 2012?
Yeah.
So there's been no consultation with Te Atiawa now for this?
Not at this time, no. Nothing has changed as far as the I do know that if there is any extension to the footprints for the stadium, then for the complex that they have there now, then consultation will take place then. But nothing's changed with regards to what is there at the moment as to what was initially there.
Yeah, there may be no changes for
within the footprint. Within the footprint,
within the footprint, but there has been significant changes within the iwi, so none of which would have been captured.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you. Just a clarification on what Denny was asking. The recommendation one is for a term initially of 20 years with a 10-year right of renewal. Does that match what the Inglewood Community Board actually recommended?
Yes.
When they asked for a 30-year lease, that was how it was broken down?
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you.
I still have Ms. King and Councillor Moyahu with hands up. More questions?
Thank you. Just to follow up on Jackie's question with regards to consultation. So in 2012, council engaged with Te Atiawa, and in lead up to the lease renewal, council found that they didn't need to engage with Te Atiawa, because that's a long time between drinks when we're talking 2010, 12. It's almost a decade gone.
Because of what was decided within the plan that we had to maintain a lease with the Taranaki Community Stadium Trust and the other entities that are present at Jubilee Park.
So are you aware of the changes from Te Atiawa from 2012 to 2022, including a new CEO?
I should say there have been changes, like in any place there are, yeah. But not personally, I can't know.
Well, there have been. What I suppose my questions are coming to is that if council consulted with Te Atiawa in 2012, knowing that this was coming up for a lease renewal, taking into consideration that this has come to Te Huinga, wouldn't it be an appropriate step to re-engage and consult with Te Atiawa, knowing that it's almost a decade later?
I should say that seeing as the parks management plan hasn't changed over that time either, that's what we were going on.
Okay.
It hasn't, yeah.
So at no stage was there any consideration to re-engage with Te Atiawa?
Not at this stage.
Okay, thank you.
There are no further hands up.
No further questions. All right. Well, let's have a think about it then. Is there any
Ms. King has her hand up.
Thank you, Jackie.
Just through you, Mr. Chair, just a bit concerned about no engagement with Te Atiawa, given that, while I appreciate the plan was developed some years ago, to me these are always opportunities to have that conversation, and there has been obviously no process that council's undertaken to do that. So I'd be pretty concerned about moving this without having that process undertaken.
Okay.
Councillor Brown.
Just a comment and a question at the same time, really. Given that no consultation with Te Atiawa has taken place, I just wonder if the mood of the meeting would be that as long as Inglewood Stadium Trust wasn't disadvantaged, we could let this matter lie on the table while that took place and then bring it back after it's happened.
Any other comment?
Well, I'm just asking that would the Stadium Trust be disadvantaged in any way if we were to move this lay on the table to allow that to take place? Can one of the officers answer that?
No, they wouldn't be disadvantaged. I mean, the lease has expired, so they've been carrying on as usual.
Great, thank you. Mr. Chair, I'd like to formally move the matter lay on the table.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Happy to second that.
Councillor Bublitz.
Right.
That's a
put the vote.
Procedural motion.
Procedural motion?
Yeah. Which just means you just move it with no discussion.
Right. So it's been moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Bublitz. All those in favour of that recommendation or motion, should I say? Yeah, put your hand up. Are you getting them, Julie?
I think so, but if there's anyone against.
Passed unanimously.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so this matter will lie on the table, and hopefully the consultation could happen with Te Aotearoa as soon as to move forward, and hopefully they arrive at a point where everybody feels that they've been consulted with and acknowledged. Thank you very much, Councillor Bell. So Julia, we've finished our day. It's been a long, seems to be like hours. So we've no more on our agenda.
No, that's the lot.
Chair, can I say something before I see everyone just jumping out? I don't know if this is the right forum to do, and it might be too late. I'd like that we some sort of formal paper report on that's we're going to around the process of dealing with land that comes through, you know, like the sale, the acquisition, the purchase, all stuff that's coming up every meeting. And I think, you know, we need to take the lead with our rupu and see if we're satisfied with the process that the council is suggesting, and then just work from there, like just get a more formal understanding of what we're trying to achieve through council. So can I raise it now or do that offline?
Well, let's do Huinga Taumatua. If we're all here, I just maybe ask the question of maybe the mayor.
So if I can just jump in. So formally at your meeting, you can only discuss the matters on the agenda. So I suggest you close the meeting.
Right.
And then if you wish to have a discussion either amongst yourselves or have an offline discussion, I'm waiting for some guidance from Craig probably about process once the meeting's closed.
Yeah, I'm after some guidance around how it's on the table and request information and process from the council. That's what I'd like to know. Yeah, close the meeting if you want to do that first.
Shall I do that then? Shall I close the meeting and we'll have a quick chat?
As long as everyone doesn't take off, because now's the opportunity. I've got key people here that can answer my question.
You look like you're sinking. You're slowly disappearing. Anyway, I'd like to close our meeting. I'd just like to thank everybody for their contribution. It's been really, really interesting and I think positive. That's what I take out of today. So I'd just like to thank everybody who's been involved, to the council officers and also to the members of Te Huinga, Taumatua and other councils that have been here too. Thank you, Julie. Thank you very much for working with me today. It's been awesome. I'll just say our karakia, and then for those who wish maybe Te Huinga, if you could stay together for a little while, Julie, if that's okay, and we can just have a quick little chat while we can. Okay. Unuhia, i te uru tapu nui. Kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua, i te ara takatū. Koe ara e rongo, whakairihia ake ki runga, kia whena, kia wātia, aira, kia wātia, pai mariri. Kia ora. Thank you very much.